Well, I found Greg's paper so reasonable and informative that I really don't have uh, real criticisms of it. I learned a lot. I spent a whole morning looking online at these various dictionaries. You can get lost in thought looking at legally important historical words doing that. So what I really want to talk about is for what uses judges might want to put the dictionary, especially old dictionaries, and which ones referring to them work better than others. That's what I want to focus on. And some of this will fit well into Greg's taxonomy of potential problems. Some of it might not, but it doesn't miss by much, and it would just require a little bit of adjustment. First of all, I don't think there's any doubt that looking at old dictionaries provides some important information about changes in meaning over time. He didn't talk about it yesterday, but in John McGinnis's paper, he talked about the word repugnant, and that meaning changed over time, and it didn't used to have this notion of disgust that it contains now, apparently. It just meant inconsistent with other laws. And if you didn't know that, then you would not have that much information. You can get it from the dictionary. You get a lot of things. Like, it's kind of like reading Shakespeare. It's nice to have an edition with the footnotes so you can tell what those words meant back then. Otherwise, you can't really understand Shakespeare very well. Secondly, I'm not really terribly concerned with the fact that dictionaries report different senses of words. People are very, very good contextualizers. So the word chair can mean a seat for one person, or it can mean the head of a committee. But if you say, I spoke to the chair, we will know the context in which you meant that, and hopefully it's not the one that would bring you to the asylum. Now, what's a dictionary for? Well, what do you use it for in everyday life and use it effectively? Well, you look up words you don't know, and that's kind of what I'm talking about right now. One looks, if you don't know the meaning of a word and you've heard it, you look it up and you get a sense of it. The dictionaries encapsulate word meaning in a small number of lines, and lexicographers are given an average number of lines per entry and a number of entries. And you also sometimes can get a definition of words you do know, but it would be difficult for you to characterize the meaning of that word because it's hard to define words. People are really not very good definers. You could just try to write down a definition of the word dog or something like that. You really can't do it. But and in fact, the dictionary that I use has a picture of Fido next to the definition of some technical language about it. It's not easy. So that's what we really use dictionaries for most of the time in everyday life. And it's fine when judges use them that way as an aid to giving a good definition when they believe that a lexicographer would be more skilled than they are, and to look up words they don't know, and to look up the meanings of words at a time earlier in history where that meaning is relevant, but the words may have changed meaning. It's all very legitimate use of dictionaries. Dictionaries are usually not good for resolving borderline cases. So if you ask whether the color of a coat is blue or green, you're going to get disagreements about that. And the color blue, a good dictionary might have a prototypical blue, they might have a prototypical green. People resolve those differences in different ways, and the dictionary's not going to help. Is that piece of furniture a love seat or a sofa, or it's some kind of peculiar length and you don't know? The dictionary will not help you decide whether it's a love seat or a sofa. And what powers are great powers? They're going to be great powers, they're going to be small powers, puny powers, and they're going to be powers where you don't know whether they're great or they're puny or they're somewhere in between, and the dictionary's not going to help you. You can look up the word great in the dictionary and you're not going to know any more than before you looked up the word great. And to make things a little bit worse, psychologists have shown that there's consensus about category membership of prototypical cases, but that consensus dissipates as we stray from the prototype. So I've actually done some experiments on that also. So there's what counts as pollution is something that's relevant in insurance law because there are pollution exclusions. So if you take a factory that's using sand in some manufacturing process, somebody is sickened from breathing in the sand, and you ask whether that's a pollution injury. The courts go both ways on it. About 40% of the people will say that is a pollution injury, about 40% will say it's not, and about 20% will say that they don't know. And then you say, how many people out of 100 agree with your answer, do you think? And I just told you how many. And everybody thinks they're in about a 65 to 75% majority, no matter how much they're in a majority or a minority or what. So when you use the dictionary, to take a case in which it's a non-prototypical, difficult borderline case. What judges tend to do is to try to use the dictionaries for gotcha answers, saying that, well, I found a dictionary in which this concept is included because of the way the definition is written, or it's excluded. And they sometimes have disagreements about the legitimacy of each other's dictionaries, and I don't think that that practice is a very helpful use of the dictionary, application of the use of the dictionary. I think many are, but I don't think that one is. Another problem with using the dictionary in interpretation has to do with the order of definitions. Dictionaries differ as to what the order of definitions means, and you can read the beginning of the dictionary to find out how each dictionary is constructed that way. Judges tend to think that the greatest usage meaning is the first meaning, but in old dictionaries, more often it was based on history, or just at random. They don't even tell you what they were doing. You really don't have any idea. The Oxford English Dictionary is based on historical usage. The earlier definitions are first. Webster's third claims to be that. The Random House and American Heritage Dictionaries claim to have to do with frequency of usage, and you have to be very careful about that. That wouldn't be a misuse of the dictionary if you did it right, but you have to do it right. Finally, or two more points. One of them is that dictionaries differ. Greg was talking about that. And I think that a very good practice is to look at as many dictionaries as you can and triangulate. And this is what St. Augustine said you should do with the scriptures. Everything was translated into Latin. He was terrible at foreign languages, so he couldn't learn Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic. So we'd take a whole lot of Latin translations, put them next to each other, and see where the outliers are, and try to get a core and essence, as opposed to saying, well, I take this side, so I'll just use this translation, and you think the scriptures mean that, and you take that translation. And you're going to get fewer uses of a dictionary where you have to do that because you don't take advantage of the differences in a way that judges sometimes do, but I think you would have more legitimacy. And just as an exercise to conclude, I did look up the word regulate in a lot of these old dictionaries, couldn't help myself, from the Sebelius case, and it's very interesting. There's this disagreement between the Chief Justice and Justice Ginsburg about the meaning of regulate, based in part, but not entirely, on these dictionary uses. So Johnson said that it means to adjust by rule or method, or to direct. Those are the two definitions, and that was 1770 something. And then in the 1790s, Sheridan comes in with exactly the same language because he plagiarized. And then Ashe comes in around the same time to adjust, to direct according to rule. Sounds like he tried to paraphrase so that he can keep himself out of plagiarism territory, but basically say the same thing. And you see the same thing with Perry. So there's really this constellation of people in agreement, but mostly through plagiarism. The current definition in Webster's third is about 8 lines long, very different, and it contains quite a bit of information about what they consider the usual usage, which you don't see in old dictionaries, but which could be legally relevant. What's the ordinary meaning of a term as used in a particular time is something that originalists and really people of various interpretive practices think is relevant. You don't see it in old dictionaries. You do see it in some new dictionaries, but not all new dictionaries. As for the use of the dictionary in the Obamacare case, I think that most of the debate really is regulate. Robert's argument was that you can't regulate something if it didn't exist and the mandate wasn't there. It didn't exist, so you can't regulate it. Well, that's right, but what the dictionary doesn't tell you is what the object of adjust is. So you can't adjust the mandate if it wasn't there, but you can adjust the financial mechanism for the provision of health care. And there seemed to be a disagreement about what it is that you're regulating or adjusting. The dictionary tells you absolutely nothing about that. So whatever one's position is on that case, I don't think the use of dictionaries was terribly helpful there, nor was the fight over whether it was legitimate to take the second definition from this dictionary as opposed to the first definition of some other dictionary. So I think they could be quite useful, but that the more that the legal system knows about what they're good for and what they're not, the better.